Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Nate Otto, past president of UUC. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience in the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events in our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comments section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. I'd like to draw your attention to recent announcements. For those in person, they are printed in your order of service. There are links in the UUC newsletter and weekly UU Connections for those watching online today. Thank you for joining us in person and online this morning.
We're singing Building Bridges 1023 from the Teal Hymnal.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach? Voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Hi, I'm Debbie Campbell, your worship associate for today. Our opening words come from Meredith Olson. We were all children once, and we carry fragments of our childhood times with us. Today, let us honor those children who walked before us, who transformed into who we have become, who led us to this place, who have lessons for us still. Please join me in reading the words for lighting the chalice from your order of service. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community, faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. Our first reading today comes from Bruce D. Perry, What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing. Childhood experiences literally impact the biology of the brain. Our earliest developmental experiences, particularly touch and other relation-based sensory cues, including the caregiver's smell and the way they rock the infant, the songs they hum when feeding the infant, any unique movement in the way they respond to the infant when it's needy. All these things are organizing experiences that help create the infant's worldview. Really, every aspect of human functioning is influenced by early developmental experiences, both when there are consistent, predictable, and loving interactions, and when there is chaos, threat, unpredictability, or lack of love. Love given and felt is dependent upon the ability of the person to be present, attentive, attuned, and responsive to another human being. This glue of humanity has been essential to the survival of our species and to the health and happiness of the individual. Each Sunday, we give half of all non-pledge donations to nonprofit organizations that work to help others. You may give cash or make checks payable to UUC or indicate on the memo line, whether it is for pledge payment or today's 50-50 recipient, which today is the LGBTQ+ Community Center. We also have the option in your program of texting to give, and you can scan, I believe, to give as well. With gratitude for abundance in our lives, we give to help people in need and to support the work of this congregation. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
This hymn is called What Wondrous Love, and it is in the gray hymnal, number 18.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friend to me gathered round, O my soul, O my soul. Friends to me gathered round, O my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing.
Please join me in reading what's printed in your order of service. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Our second reading today comes from Diane Dogwart. Ask any parent, and they will tell you that life changes with the birth of a child. The life that was is no longer. One life ends, and a new one begins, one that centers on the well-being of a vulnerable and dependent child. Even parents who have furnished a nursery with all the necessary equipment, a crib, warm blankets, colorful and cuddly toys, diapers, and a soft, safe environment for a child to explore can find themselves unprepared for the larger realities of parenting. Children are demanding. Their needs can sometimes seem unending. While the relationship between parent and child may be based on mutual affection, it is neither equal nor reciprocal. Children are dependent on their parents for their very survival. They are vulnerable in a way that parents are not. The job of parents is to meet the needs of their children. It is not the job of children to meet the needs of their parents. That's not to say that raising children doesn't meet some deep needs. For example, the satisfaction that comes from the dedication required to raise children into caring adults, or the joy that comes from their laughter, or the feel of their tiny arms offering an affectionate hug. These are all the tender joys that come with having children present in our lives, the unexpected gifts they bring us. Children are precious gifts, but there is no doubt that they come with a burden of responsibility. They cannot care for themselves, so we must care for them, and we must do so in a way that empowers them to eventually take responsibility for their own lives. We will behold a child. When we behold a child, we behold the future. How the future is shaped depends on the lives we create for our children now.
Good morning. My name is Allison, Oliphant. It's quite an honor to be here this morning to share this information with all of you about resilience in early childhood. I have been a member of this congregation since September of 2006 when I moved to Eau Claire and started college. And so now to be at a place in my life where I have any kind of important knowledge to impart during a summer service is like a little bit surreal. I'd like to start by telling you just a bit about who I am and how I have come to be passionate about the topic of resilience in early childhood. I earned my undergraduate degree in early childhood special and general education here at UW Eau Claire, and as part of my coursework, I took a class in diversity and equity that for the first time opened my eyes to the reality of racism and historical trauma, as well as to my own privilege and the ways in which I had been sheltered from knowing the difficult truths about things like the Little Rock Nine and Jim Crow laws. That class was one of a handful of events that have changed the trajectory of my life. After graduating, I worked for 9 years as an elementary classroom teacher here in Eau Claire, and during that time, I also earned my master's degree from the University of Illinois with a focus on diversity and equity issues in education. I was and continue to be passionate about questioning the status quo and digging deeper into biases and foundational inequities that impact outcomes for children. In the spring of 2020, I was struggling in my role as a classroom teacher. I was having a hard time managing increasingly disruptive behaviors and couldn't ignore the toll that it was taking on my mental health. That led me to make the difficult decision to leave classroom teaching, and that September, I took a new position with the Birth to 3 program in Chippewa County, where I currently work as a teacher and service coordinator. In this role, I work directly with infants and toddlers and their families in their natural environments, so the places they typically spend their time, to focus on the goals that caregivers have determined are most important to them in their child's development. There's a set of criteria for eligibility for this program, and the team was finding that there were many children who, although deemed typically developing by standardized measures, were struggling with things like self-regulation and aggressive behaviors at their daycare centers. What was being missed? Just before I started in this position, the team had been awarded a grant for an assessment tool and a curriculum that focused more on a child's social emotional development and more specifically on resilience. I jumped right into these materials and found that this was a strong area of interest for me. It made me wonder if all children had caregivers that were well-versed in fostering resilience, would they be better suited to enter elementary school? Would it change how they grow and build relationships into adulthood? And then I received a gift from the universe in the form of the Infant, Early Childhood, and Family Mental Health Capstone Certificate Program through UW-Madison. Although it meant a year of balancing work, parenting, and schoolwork, it was ultimately an extremely rewarding opportunity. So now, 10 months later, I have graduated from that program, and I'm in the process of applying to be endorsed as an infant and family specialist through the Wisconsin Alliance for Infant Mental Health. I think it's important to point out that while I know a lot about this, I am not an expert. I do not consider myself an expert because there's always more to know, and every family and every child is so different. But I'm constantly learning about the importance of supporting early relationships, gathering resources to do that, and trying my best to show up with the caregivers I work with and be with them to muddle through the muck of parenthood and the immense challenges that caregiving presents. I just want to note before delving further into this that much of the research around early attachment is about the relationship between a mother and child. I do my best to be gender neutral and affirming of all people who may give birth or parent, but I may slip up at times or just not know the best way to phrase something. So if you have anything to share with me after the service in regard to being more inclusive in these terms or with this content, I welcome that conversation. When you think of resilience, you might think of a rubber band or an octopus or even silly putty, anything that can be twisted and squished and moved out of its original form and then back again. Resilience, by definition, is the ability to successfully recover from difficulty or crisis. In the field of mental health, this is a mental and emotional capacity, a set of strategies, skills, and characteristics that allow a person to adapt when faced with a challenge. It's common to hear an adult say that it's a good thing that kids are resilient when they're dealing with a difficult situation. They got in a scary car accident, well, they'll be fine. Kids are so resilient. They're going through maybe a divorce or another major family transition. Oh, thank goodness kids are so resilient. They're recovering from a broken bone or maybe a hospital stay. Oh, they're doing great. Kids are so resilient. I want to take a step back and make a correction to this line of thinking. Resilience is not an innate trait. It is not something children are born with, but rather a capacity that is built and developed over time in the context of relationships and life experiences. Children have the ability to build resilience with the support of a caring adult. It may be surprising to hear that the journey toward resilience begins in infancy. Donald Winnicott, an English pediatrician and psychoanalyst who is well known in the field of child development, once said that there is no such thing as a baby. A baby cannot exist alone, but is essentially part of a relationship. Infants are born wired to communicate with their caregivers. Once thought of as little moldable, helpless blobs, research over time has shown that babies have incredible capacity to communicate their needs from the very first days of life. They're born with protective reflexes as well as all 5 senses that offer them a variety of ways to begin learning about their environment. Although clear vision is still developing, babies are attracted to moving objects and to faces, which helps them to recognize their caregivers and discern between familiar and unfamiliar people. They're familiar with the intonation patterns of their mother's native language and mimic them in their cries. And they're captivated by parentese, the almost sing-song way that many adults are compelled to talk to infants. Babies seem to be able to recognize the scent of their mothers and have a preference for sweet tastes. They respond positively to slow, affectionate touch, and skin-to-skin contact is encouraged with the mother and or other primary caregivers almost immediately after birth in order to begin regulating temperature, breathing, and heart rate. This is the beginning of co-regulation, the crucial process that fosters the development of self-regulation. I like to think of a resilient child or even adult as a big, strong oak tree. If we divide the tree into its main parts, we have the roots, the trunk, and the leaves and the branches. The foundation of resilience is attachment. So attachment is what makes up the roots of that strong tree. In addition to co-regulation, which we will return to in a bit, that brand new, snuggly newborn baby experiencing their first moments of bonding with their caregiver is also already developing attachment, or the strong emotional connection between caregiver and baby that develops as the caregiver provides safety, nourishment, and comfort for the infant. For babies and young children dependent on others for their care, they learn quickly throughout their daily routines whether or not their primary caregiver is able to consistently and reliably provide those things. A healthy, secure attachment builds as the caregiver responds to the baby's cues, picking them up when they cry, feeding and changing them as necessary, and even removing overwhelming stimulation when the baby has had enough. The baby comes to rely on the security of this relationship and to trust that their needs will be met. As the baby grows into a curious and mobile toddler, secure attachment allows them to take risks in exploring their environment and trying new things. This newfound initiative forms the branches and leaves of the tree, extending out to test limits and boundaries while having a safe place to return to. A few weeks ago, my family and I were at a campground swimming pool that had a toddler section with a small slide, and we spent several hours there, having a small child of our own. And at one point, a grandma and her grandson waded into the water, and he showed some interest in trying out the slide. The grandma gently encouraged him to climb up and then push off at the top. He was hesitant and did not especially like the splash of water in his face at the bottom. But after some snuggles with Grandma, the process repeated. Encouragement up and down the slide, flustered at the bottom, reassured with snuggles, and then back at it again. What a beautiful example of the role that attachment plays in building resilience. Without the support of the grandma, the little boy may not have felt safe in trying something new and scary. Or the opposite, he may have ignored any risks and belly flopped into the water without regard for his safety. His attachment to his grandma reassured him that he was safe and capable so that he could go out of his comfort zone a little bit at a time. Many prominent voices, from psychologist Jean Piaget to Maria Montessori to the iconic Fred Rogers, have spoken about the importance of play. In the words of Rogers, play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. As the example of the grandma and grandson demonstrates, attachment is the basis for initiative and provides that safe base to come back to in between adventures. Large motor play, such as climbing on play equipment, stomping through puddles, or pulling a wagon, provide important input for muscle development and balance. They require a child to take risks, to do things at new speeds or heights or in new places. My daughter was born with hypotonia, or a low muscle tone, that has made those motor skills more difficult to master. She has required a significant amount of encouragement and reassurance as she still struggles to take new risks even when she's physically capable of doing them. I can say that if we were to just leave her be, provide no encouragement or modeling of persistence, or even worse, actively discouraging her from trying, she would not be where she is today. We have learned that she responds well to my husband in particular when faced with a challenging task. They have come up with routines and phrases that help her to overcome her anxiety. Their relationship has been critical to her development. It has provided her not only physical safety, but also the confidence to take some new risks on her own, using the strategies that they've practiced. Imaginative and pretend play also provide a safe place in which to enact a child's dreams, fears, and inner thoughts. There is a lot of the world that does not make sense even for most adults, and to a child it feels even more complex and abstract. Having an environment that encourages free play provides many opportunities for trial and error, or for trying on new ideas in situations that the child is dealing with. Cooperative play, or even just parallel play, side by side with others, allows endless chances for a child to practice problem solving, communication, and other social skills. They learn by doing. Children feel confident to make the most of these play situations, to use their initiative when they feel both physically and emotionally safe to explore and express themselves. We'll return one more time to that big oak tree. We have roots and branches, and now we need to know about the trunk, the part of the tree that keeps it steady and upright. The trunk of the resilience tree is self-regulation. As mentioned earlier, infants and caregivers begin the process of co-regulation from those first moments of life, when there is no such thing as a baby. The primary caregiver, in essence, does the regulating both for themselves and the baby, by responding to the baby's cues and modeling their own self-regulation. When I talk with families about these skills and also work to do this with my own child, I try to keep at the forefront that self-regulation is both very difficult and typically later to develop as an independent skill than attachment and initiative. Add on top of that being responsible for an infant, and then a toddler, and then a young child, and so on and so forth can be downright exhausting. And it is hard to be well regulated and present when you are being forced awake against your will or having your last ounce of patience tested. These skills do not happen overnight, but rather with a lot of practice over time through a variety of different situations. Many parents, myself included, may find that working with a child on self-regulation is a type of parallel process, and that they're learning what works for them to stay calm and regulated at the same time that the child is figuring out that same thing. Often, in wanting the best for our children, it's tempting to push away the negative feelings and encourage happiness at all costs. If you go to Carson Park, for example, on a busy Saturday, you'll undoubtedly hear your fair share of, "Oh, you don't need to cry, you're fine, dust it off," reflexive phrases like that on the surface seem to remind kids to be resilient. They're typically very well-intentioned attempts to keep the peace and offer comfort. However, in order to be able to effectively employ strategies for coping with injuries or something scary or a situation that seems unfair, kids need to be able to recognize when they're feeling upset and know that it's normal and okay to feel that way. They need adults who acknowledge those tough feelings and provide them with ways to get through them in a healthy way, maybe by taking a belly breath or having a seat on a bench to regroup. Maybe later during play, following the child's lead as they want to reenact a tough situation with dolls or dinosaurs in their play. Self-regulation does not mean being happy all the time, but rather being able to accept and process difficult feelings and situations and come out okay on the other side. Attachment to our primary caregivers, while essential to survival in infancy, continues to impact our resilience and our overall health and quality of life as we grow. Beyond the days of needing a diaper change or someone to make a bottle, humans still thrive when supported by relationships with others. And very interestingly, the relationships we form, whether they be platonic or romantic or caregiving in nature, are impacted most not by what we see others around us doing, but by our own first relationships with our caregivers. Do we enter relationships with trust and respect? Are we able to rely on other people for help when needed? Can we repair problems in a relationship when they arise? I find that to be so powerful and, in all honesty, a little bit overwhelming. After all, we have little or no control over how we were parented or cared for as children. On top of that, there is a lot of pressure in the social media age to be a perfect parent. The advice is unsolicited and nonstop, and even caregivers with strongly held beliefs about child-rearing practices may find themselves doubting that what they're doing is the right thing. There's good news on this front. Not only is perfect parenting literally impossible to do, it would actually not be the best thing for your child if you could. Imperfect parenting, or what Winnicott termed good enough parenting, is the most beneficial for raising independent, confident, and resilient children. This means that the caregiver is well attuned with their child for about 30% of the time. Just 30%. During the other 70% of the time that is not well attuned and maybe includes mismatches in communication or temperament, the child and caregiver need to work through a challenging spot in order to regain attunement. Knowing how to repair these small ruptures in the relationship is critical for building resilience, and a skill children will need as they branch out to form relationships with others. The other piece of good news is that adults, we have the power to recognize gaps in our own ability to be resilient and to make changes. That is, of course, simple to say and far more difficult to do, but it is possible. We can seek to surround ourselves with people who see the best in us and tell us so, to find communities that affirm our passions and interests, to learn more about ourselves and our upbringings through therapy and self-reflection, to have outlets for big feelings that don't harm ourselves and others and that bring us through the discomfort rather than avoiding it. It is not selfish to make yourself the priority and to choose your own well-being first, because that will carry over into all other parts of your life. In reflecting on the impacts of the pandemic, whether it is here at the UUC with the worship committee or talking with families that I work with, or even just in my own personal life, a common theme is the social isolation and lack of available support during such a difficult time. People all around the world discovered and invented new ways to maintain social connection almost instinctively, because as humans, that's what keeps us going. In his book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel A. van der Kolk writes that all of us, but especially children, need such confidence that others will know, affirm, and cherish us. Without that, we can't develop a sense of agency that will enable us to assert, this is what I believe in, this is what I stand for, this is what I will devote myself to. As long as we feel safely held in the hearts and minds of the people who love us, we will climb mountains and cross deserts and stay up all night to finish projects. Children and adults will do anything for people they trust and whose opinion they value. We need each other in order to be our best selves. According to Harvard's Center on the Developing Child, there are 3 key descriptors of a caregiver and environment that is well suited for promoting resilience in children: predictable, responsive, and supportive. Predictable caregivers and environments provide safety and security for children who are learning how to have their needs met, who to come for reassurance, and where appropriate boundaries lie. Responsive caregivers learn to recognize the cues of their child and respond appropriately to meet the outstanding need. They're open and flexible to learning from and adapting to the needs of the child. Supportive caregivers follow the lead of the child to explore new ideas and activities. They accept them for who they are and who they want to be and make known their unconditional love and support. They advocate for the best interest of the child, even when, especially when, it is difficult. Remember that 30%. There are so many life circumstances that can and do interfere with perfect caregiving, and that is as it should be. These characteristics foster the development of attachment, initiative, and self-regulation, and grow a tiny sapling into that strong tree, able to withstand the brunt of life's wind and weather. As we speak, there is an incredible strain on many caregiving relationships in our community. As a result of the pandemic, social isolation, depression, and anxiety in parents has been heightened. Many families are facing financial strain and stressors, and childcare centers are struggling to find and keep quality staff. Unfortunately, adversity throughout the course of life is unavoidable, and in the past few years, many people have felt that acutely. This is what I'm hoping the major takeaways are from this presentation today, no matter what your direct relationship is to parenting. First, that caring for children is very important and critical work. Second, that being a caregiver who is good enough is good enough. And third, that building a local community and a society at large that supports all caregivers is one of the most significant and impactful steps to ensuring a healthy, happy, resilient future. If you are a parent, no matter what stage you are in, keep up the good work. Raising entirely new people is not for the faint of heart. If you are feeling good about where you are on that journey, please share tips with the rest of us. If you're struggling, reach out for help. to a friend, to a colleague, to a doctor or therapist, to local family and parenting support organizations. There are so many kind and empathetic people all around you, and they know that when you are your best, we are all better for it. It is hard to ask for help, but it is a testament to your strength that you can recognize when there is trouble and do what it takes to intervene. If you are not a parent but are a primary caregiver or play another important role in a child's life, maybe a child care provider or a grandparent, your support is invaluable. You are providing so many opportunities for building resilience each and every day, and the relationship you are building will literally last a lifetime. If you are not involved in any way with young children, maybe you don't even like kids, that's fine. You are needed too. Voices from any and every walk of life are essential to advocate for policies that support caregivers. Comprehensive sex education, access to contraception, and the autonomy to make decisions about reproductive health, universal access to quality health care, including mental health services, affordable and safe housing, expanded parental leave, and high-quality childcare options are at the top of that list. According to the State of Babies Yearbook for 2022, which is compiled and published by 0 to 3, 40% of babies in the United States live in households with poor or low income. 5% of toddlers in low-income households do not have medical insurance, and over 6% of birthing people do not receive prenatal care. The advancement of anti-racist policies should also be a priority. 52% of babies living in poverty are babies of color, making them more likely to experience the ill effects of systems that by design do not meet or are ill-equipped to respond to the needs of families and to communities in general. Excuse me. I'd like to end with a short passage from Patricia Hortdorfer. Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes in Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn that the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors, Kaserian Injira, one would always say to another, it means, "And how are the children?" It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, "All the children are well," meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young, the powerless are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reasons for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles of existence do not preclude proper caring for their young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question, "And how are the children?" I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of or cared for in our own country. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, would feel an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all children in our community, in our town and state, and in our country. I wonder if we could truly say without hesitation, "The children are well." Yes, all the children are well. It is true that it takes a village to raise a child, and my goodness, what an overwhelming task. But we do the best we can to raise our own children, to encourage others in doing the same, and in being outspoken with our praise and recognition of caregivers and the policies that support them. The future is in our hands. Thank you.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice by reading what's printed in your order of service. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words come from Chris Rothbauer, also printed in your order of service. May our lives be reflections of the beauty, peace, and joy that is possible in the world. And may the love we find in this place sustain us as we go our separate ways.